Well, Call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Can I borrow yours?
Yes, go right ahead.
Send it here somewhere.
I'll find it.
Approval of the minutes for October 2021.
Making a motion to approve as presented.
It's in there.
Second.
Got it.
Okay, we have a motion to approve as written and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
David, I'll abstain.
Oh,
I wasn't here.
One abstention. Sorry, it doesn't matter if I don't need them. I don't need them. It's okay.
okay, whatever. Okay. Appearance of interested citizens. Rhonda. Oh, why don't you go with it? Have all
Can I take this off to talk?
I think I'm
Yeah.
pretty good. Yeah.
Because
Well,
I'll
I think
pass
we're
out
over
if I
6
don't.
feet, so I think you could do that.
Okay. I'm booster shot and everything, so.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Okay, my name's Rhonda Rich. I'm on the West Kaiser Neighborhood Association Board. And Carol Dorfler's the president and Carol Phipps is the vice president. And both of them are out of town. And so being on the board for 15 years, I got asked to come forward and present this to you tonight. And so I hope to summarize this in 5 minutes. I think that's what I have, what our vision and recommendations are. And if not, I would encourage you to ask me questions after the 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and read it, and because I don't want to miss any points and just kind of ramble on here. So we are stunned and dismayed in the master plan draft at the future vision, which places a very negative view of the park and recommendations to not maintain it as parkland, in addition to take it off our park inventory. Just a little history, in 2008, a master plan was developed with citizens attending an open house to vote on amenities that they would like to see in many of Kaiser's parks. Palmisia was included. There were 15 items at that time under plan recommendations. Encouraged by having a plan for the park, the West Kaiser Neighborhood Association participated in a major work event. I believe it was called Clean Up Kaiser Parks. We cleared brush at Palmisia and cleared the path to the river. It was not maintained and therefore became overgrown. In 2016, after the city discovered that they could not sell the land, Gary Blake, who was, I believe, president at that time, initiated a plan to again develop a path and request from the city to remove some ivy and dead trees on the bank to allow river viewing and include some benches. The city could not commit to maintaining the project, so it was abandoned, and I think that was before the parks fee was initiated. However, during the past year, as many of you are aware, WICNA, West Kaiser Neighborhood Association, represented by Carol Dorfler, has been in conversation with the Parks Board and moving forward to develop a plan that allows park goers to observe the Willamette River and wildlife, a more passive use than a traditional park. Recently, we've been encouraged that on August 15th, the cleanup project led by Matt Lawyer and Dave Loudon, along with 6 McNary students, occurred and a picnic table was placed next to the 2 parking places. Also, several WICNA board members attended the joint meeting with the Parks Board and the City Council at Palmisia Park on September 13th in hopes to encourage everyone the value of a riverfront park. In addition, the park has been mowed over the summer, demonstrating the city's commitment to maintain it. This has all been encouraging. Our request is that the use of Palmisia Park be reevaluated in this master plan. The master plan report supports improvement to Palmisia Park due to its nature of being one of the 4 Willamette River waterfront parks in Keizer. Some facts that you should know from the report: in the pop-up event at the Kaiser Fest in August, 31% of Kaiser citizens voted to improve river access, making it the top priority of what citizens wanted to see in parks. Secondly, enhance waterfront access to take advantage of the opportunities offered by our water resources is stated in the Kaiser Parks and Recreation Master Plan vision. Thirdly, also the city retains 8 long-range goals for the provision of park and recreation services. Goal 2 is to maximize opportunities for public enjoyment of waterfront access. Fourthly, the city's work to enhance parks and recreation over the next 10 years will be guided by the following overarching directions described as guiding principles. Principle 4 is to increase access to natural areas and river. So we ask that you keep Palmisia Park as parkland for all citizens to enjoy, and that efforts are continued so that this park can be enjoyed as the natural area that it is and what it has to offer for scenic views of our unique waterway, the Willamette River. So, thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. Any questions for Rhonda? Oh, yes, Matt.
I have a question for Robert. Substantively, is there much of a change in the recommendations on Palmisia from the last master plan?
Yeah,
There is? Okay.
this current revision is way different than our last one.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I do have a question. With West Kaiser Neighborhood Association, with the intent or the desire to have it continue as a park and wanting to develop it, I believe that I remember from the last meeting that one of the reasons why that was not under consideration was because of the location of the park within the neighborhood. And being that it would be a city park and public access, would the neighborhood want to have the parking lot further developed if that was even possible? And would they be okay with increased foot traffic of non-neighborhood residents should that be developed and considered? And I'm just wondering are those discussions that have been had within the neighborhood association, and are you guys okay with that if it were even considered to consider developing that river access further?
I think we've done canvass the neighborhood in the past, and you get different people saying different things. So I don't know if you can generally just say, no, we don't want this, or yes, we all want this. There were quite a few neighborhood people who went to that, it was 2008, open houses in person with COVID. I know you couldn't do the charrettes, which was disappointing because I think you would have gotten a better picture of what people want. And there are 2 parking places, and you can park up Cummings Lane. And actually, that's 2 more parking places than Sunset Park has, which, that's an open area that, people have to kind of accept if they live next to a park that there's going to be park uses. And we're not asking to put in, pickleball court or something that's really going to interfere with the neighbors around there. In fact, there was a vegetative buffer was in the master plan in 2008. And so we're not looking at those amenities that were discussed then because it was quite extensive. Really, it's a passive use. I think people walking down the park has been used quite a bit by neighbors, and that's what the neighborhood parks do. And it's also waterfront access, and that's not being developed anymore. And so to say that we're going to take this away from a park, I think would be a disservice to the citizens of Keizer. So,
Thank you.
But we're willing to help, probably do a work party or something if we, I think the problem is that we don't know what we can do down there. We know what we want to do. We want to do the trail. We want to, put some viewing areas, do some brush, talk to Matt and Matthew about maybe clearing out some brush so you can see the river. And people you could just sit on the dike. It's almost like a seat. But the question is, how much can you do in that area with the dike there? So I think that's kind of something that the city would have to address for us, and we can move forward to know what we can do. And right now, people slide down the bank, so it's eroding the bank. If we could do some kind of stationary stairs or some railing to help people get down there, because it is accessible. It's kind of like an obstacle course, but you can, people are able, can get down there. It's not something you're ever going to be able to make ADA accessible, but it's just, I have to say, Sunset Park too, I don't know how long you've lived in Keizer. I lived on Sunset Avenue, been there in West Keizer 40 years, and Sunset Park looked just like Palmisia before Daryl Richardson, who lived next door to it, went in there and he said it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Because he went through and he did a lot of clearing out the brush. My kids used to go down there and do jumps and on their bikes, and it was just underbrush. And now it's a beautiful park that we all love. And Wallace House Park's another example that Matt got people down there to clear the brush, and we're not asking to clear the bank off. It's like, what can we do to get viewpoints? I know there is also in the master plan discussion of like bird blinds over at Claggett Creek Park. So you can view stuff down at the creek and Labish Ditch that you could view there. And I mean, the Willamette River is the place to view. You've got the big birds and you've got, it's just nice to sit there and watch the river, so.
Yes, Matt?
So I'm looking at the recommendations specifically on page C47 for Palmisia. Earlier in the document, it does say that there's not, as a 10-year plan, this master plan does not recommend any new land acquisition or divestment. So I don't think there's an expectation to get rid of this land. But I think the recommendations lend itself to some alternatives, and some of those alternatives might be that coordinated maintenance agreement with West Keizer. I think there's some room to have conversations. I think that there's some existing challenges with the Army Corps of Engineers and ability to do certain things that we learned about actually on the park store. And so I think it's just a bigger conversation that probably has to be addressed from Robert and see what the opportunities are. But I don't think there's anything here to indicate that the land would be given away. Maybe it doesn't have a park sign for right now. I don't know what that looks like. But I think there's also certainly a lot of opportunity to continue to have conversations and see what the investment might be from West Keizer or other groups to look at the improved parking access and assess the overall dollars and things that would go into that property to make it more of a park than not. And that's just based off what I'm reading the recommendations, so.
And I think we're willing to do, like we've done in the past, some specific things. And there's been people who said, well, I'd like to donate a bench. And, we can do some things like that. But as far as ongoing maintenance, I don't think that's something that the neighborhood association really can commit to.
Sure.
Honestly, to keep the ivy off the trees, or if we could do a work party if we have another ice storm or something like that. But we would hope that the parks fee has helped along with this maintenance. We're older people on the Parks Board. I'm glad you can get high school kids out there and get them working. That's great, and we could probably do that too. But yes, we would be definitely willing to have some conversation as to what we can do down there and make it happen before 10 years. Like I said, I've been on the board for 15, and we've been struggling with this park for 15 years, and it's, and there's a lot of people who use it. Just make it a better park. So, thank you.
So I have something really quick. What I'm getting from you is it's more about the park than it is the parking.
Right.
Right. When it comes to or not even access to the river, but view of the river.
Right.
And being able to just sit and watch the river. So it's really about clearing that bank. More
Or
than
certain
developing
spots,
anything.
yeah.
Or, because there's parks in Keizer that have zero parking,
Right.
Zero parking, they're neighborhood parks.
Right.
So I don't think it's so much the issue of parking as it is the view of the river.
Right.
Could something in the master plan be added to clear some of that bank to provide a better view? I don't know. I don't know where it's at. I do know that, if we're not improving necessarily, we're removing.
Yeah, I don't know, the Corps of Engineers might be ones that have to be talked to about that, whether dead trees are a hazard to have on a dike. I mean, they're going to fall over and tear out part of the earth there, so, yeah, I think, and that's not something that the neighborhood association is going to approach the Corps of Engineers. We would hope that Robert or somebody in Public Works would be able to get that conversation going and see what we can do, and tell them, you know, that we have a park that we would like to be able to use more.
I know that sorry, can I speak now?
Sure.
Okay. I know that when we were down there, Bill was talking about getting some kind of machinery down in that area to do some clearing. One of the challenges was how do we get access to that area?
Right.
So something that could be helpful is identifying maybe neighbors in those areas that could let us use access to that area, because I think that was one of the challenges of like, who owns a property, who would let the city drive, big machinery down potentially, because having individuals down there working on that property is going to take us forever to get that work done. But if we were able to get some kind of machinery down there, that might help out with some of the timing. So is that something that West Salem,
Kaiser.
West Kaiser,
Yeah.
sorry, West Kaiser Neighborhood Association, scratch that from the video.
Yeah, I don't know who owns on either side of the dike there. I know there's access where there's some equipment. It's pretty steep slope too. I don't know how.
They'd have to come in with a flail mower on an arm.
Yeah, I didn't know, maybe R&R Tree would be willing to take out work on it gradually, maybe just a little bit every year to kind of clear out some limbs and such.
Okay.
Okay, any more
Any other questions for Rhonda?
Okay.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you.
Caroline. Excuse me.
My name's Carolyn Homan. I'm the secretary of West Kaiser Neighborhood, and I pretty much what she said. But I'm a birder, so little areas like Palmisia I really sort of treasure, and I hope that the city can find a way to make it work in terms of clearing out just enough brush that you can see the river, but that birds would still flock there, and it just would be a really nice little nature area. If we can get down to the river, so much the better. I realize there's a lot of challenges, but really hoping there's a way to work something out and keep that little gem. Like Rhonda said, there's 4 places of access to the river, and that's a real plus for Kaiser. So appreciate any consideration for Palmisia. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert, could you check on what restrictions the Corps has on that dike for us?
Yeah.
Thank you. I know, more work. Okay. Your final presence, I blame it on the mask. Mig's final presentation on our parks.
Thank you so much. Cindy Mendoza, Director of Parks and Recreation at MIG, and I am super excited to be here tonight to present to you our draft master plan for the Kaiser Park system.
You don't know which one? Oh, okay.
I can read.
You can't, you work for the county.
Sorry.
I was just trying to be helpful.
I know, I appreciate it. I didn't know you knew.
Debbie's so good at what she does.
Yes.
She doesn't trust
I
any of
appreciate
us.
her so much.
Don't touch her stuff.
I know, right? I should know better because I'm the same way at work.
When you touch stuff on my desk, I'll never find it again.
So the intent with the presentation tonight is to give you an overview of what's in the master plan, to take any questions, comments, or edits you have, and then potentially to have a motion recommending this to council if you feel it is ready to do so. As you know, the master planning process went through several phases in order to make sure we were combining community outreach with the technical analysis to be able to identify recommendations for the adopted plan that we are presenting to you. It is a 10-year plan, as you know, that's intended to not only provide the standards and policies needed to move forward, but actually identify the capital improvements needed for the park system.
It died.
So we'll pause here just briefly for a technical fix.
Dun, 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 dun,
What?
dun. I'm just trying to fill it in with music.
Oh,
Intermission music here,
so
dance up here.
I have a question for you while we try to get that to work. So we approve this and it goes to the city council. Is that the end of it, or is there any more fine tuning that can happen to this?
There will be fine tuning before it goes into the council packet based on your comments and some corrections that I'll share with you there at the end of the presentation. And then we'll also take council's comments, use that to refine the plan before we finalize it then for their adoption.
Thank you.
Of course.
What should you do, keep an extra computer over there? I got a hammer.
Yeah, maybe you should go on to your park reports.
Okay, Parks report. Tanya.
Bob Newton looks fantastic. All of those trees, the leaves are picked up. It looks like somebody got a little burly in the open field, though. It looks like maybe one of the lawnmowers got stuck.
We've been getting lawnmower stuff.
Anyways, but other than that, it looks
You
good.
put the big tires on it this time.
It looks good. And in fact, yeah, it looks great. And then Ryan J. Hill, I just drove by. I didn't go on the backside or anything, so. But
Yeah,
it looks
it's-
good from the
Looks
front.
good. There's some
It's doing good. We've had some homeless activity through the fence on the ODOT side. They keep cutting holes in our fence, but we're working through that.
Uh-oh.
That ODOT guys. Gwen.
Well, Mike Whitman Park looks good. After reading this report, I've been trying to find out if, the garden is part of the park. And after reading this 174 pages here, I found out, yes, it is. Very happy about that, so, I'd like to see a lot of volunteers there. Hopefully I'll get some in there. And, because there's only one guy that's working there all the time, like all year long. Well, it's closed up right now, I guess, winterized. And then Claggett Creek Park, that's just wonderful. It looks really good too.
Thank you. Oh, me. Northridge is undeveloped as usual. And Charles Jones looks good, except there's some graffiti on the skate park.
We're at,
Uh-oh.
On the,
in the bowl or in the fence?
it's on the outside. If you go in the parking lot, you can see it.
Okay. Thank you.
Dustin?
Duncan, yes.
Dustin?
It's Dustin.
Meadows and Ben Miller both look good. The only question I have with Meadows, I saw that the broken top, was that rail on the fence was removed. I was just curious if long-term, if that will be put back in, or is it just gonna be left as is along the road, the one that was damaged by the tree limb from the storm last January?
That's right.
To my knowledge, that was replaced with another top rail of a different color, and we're waiting on weather to get it painted the same color. So
Okay,
maybe,
it may have been a little bit since I was there on that side.
okay.
So yeah, last time I'd seen it, it hadn't been there, but it sounds like it
It's
hasn't.
repaired.
Okay,
We're just waiting for good weather to come back and paint it to match.
understood. Then no questions.
Wayne?
I've been a little tied up for the last 4 weeks, so I have no report on Clear Lake or Country Glen. I do have a new hip, and it's been 4 weeks since surgery, and recovery's going great, so.
Good. We'll expect 2 reports next time. Are we done? Is it working?
Take two. Take two.
Shall we resume?
Yes.
All right, thank you for your patience during our technical challenge there. So we are able to present to you the full draft plan today, which consists of 5 chapters that are identified here and you see before you. But there's also a lot of very important details added in the appendices that will provide more direction for staff in order to implement this plan. As you all know, it's a community-driven plan. We really appreciate the comments that we've heard, not only at these meetings, but also through our outreach, the online questionnaire, our pop-up activity that provided the bulk of our responses, but also 2 very important focus groups, one with the West Keizer Neighborhood Association and one with sports providers here in the area to understand their needs as well. And then we also were able to speak to council members to get their direction, as well as your direction throughout this planning process, which has been very important in guiding the decisions that were made throughout the course of developing the plan. The plan is based on substantial community priorities. So not just what one group would like to see happen, but what's in the best overall interest for the entire city. And this is a snapshot of the funding priorities that were identified in the online questionnaire, but it definitely speaks to the need to take care of your existing assets before developing new items. So both repairing and replacing features as well as increasing maintenance, but then also connecting them through trails and adding more and a greater variety of features in parks. As part of the planning process, we definitely wanted to make sure we understood the breadth and difference of community priorities across the city. So it's not just about maintaining assets, but also understanding where we need to provide a variety of opportunities and connections to the river, where a variety of activities are wanted, so recreation activities and even events in parks. We got some clarity on whether they wanted funds spent on, one big investment in a site such as Keizer Rapids Park or a new community center, for example, versus a number of smaller projects, so we could make sure that we understood the right level of service to provide here. And that really helped inform the mix of projects that you see in this plan. But besides the priorities, we also understood recreation trends. This is a 10-year plan, and a lot has changed even in the last 2 years as COVID has come onto the scene, which has increased the demand in parks and the interest for health and fitness activities and even connections to the outdoors and nature. So with those trends and priorities, we started to look at your park system, and while this has detail that you're not intended to read at this point, you all know that we reclassified your park system so that we could better understand sites that really were only set up to meet neighborhood needs, those neighborhood parks, versus things such as sites along the river, which are really special use parks that provide a different type of opportunity, not only for nearby neighbors, but also attracting people from across the city because of their unique features, such as riverfront property would do. So this classification really helped us understand how parks were functioning and how they needed to be developed in order to make them most effective. So that helped us look at the variety of needs across the city, whether we were talking about needs for new parkland, amenities and facilities, even park access and ADA accessibility, the connections through trails, and those activities and experiences that people desire in parks. There was a great conversation with this group about, are we the Parks Advisory Board or a Parks and Recreation Advisory Board? And what does it mean in terms of our desire for recreation activities that are self-directed versus organized recreation programs? Those are the types of things that we grappled with as part of this planning process to take into recommendations. We also very carefully evaluated areas of need across the city, realizing that your 19 parks are not all fully developed, only 16 are, and there are some areas that are highlighted in this map on yellow that do not have access to a nearby park within a 10-minute walking distance. However, as we talked about land needs and what priorities were for the next 10 years, we also pointed out that with the land that has already been acquired, you are exceeding your standard for the provision of parkland. So you only need 5 acres per 1,000 residents, which is a common metric that's used to measure parkland need. And instead, you currently have 6.2. And even if you developed no parks over the next 10 years, as the community continued to grow and add residents, you would still be exceeding in the year 2030 your land requirements. So that helped us really focus on what was needed to enhance your existing parks and make sure that we were not only looking at how to update old and worn features and improve the condition, but also take advantage of unique opportunities, such as highlighting natural features in parks by improving views or adding loop trails or enhancing play opportunities. We realized in looking in the 2008 plan that there was a lot of detail there that was important to carry forward, such as the overarching vision for the park system. But we thought there was important clarity added here with regards to the mission of the Parks Division within Public Works, that unlike what the 2008 plan suggested, they're not a full-service park and recreation provider, not really in the recreation business. And as an important part of what they do, they are collaborating with others in the community to develop, maintain, and steward the park system and support accessible recreation activities and social gatherings. So that clarity was added in a new mission statement. However, the original 8 goals of 2008 were carried forward. They're still applicable in a long-range vision for what the city desires to achieve. But we felt for the next 10 years it was more important to have some more direct guiding principles instead of these overarching goals of where you want to be in a 40, 50-year time frame. It was important to understand what the community specifically was asking the city to achieve over the next 10 years. And as we heard earlier, it's supporting routine maintenance, reinvesting in aging park features, diversifying recreation opportunities, increasing access to natural areas in the river, connecting key parks through trails, and supported expanding festivals, fairs, and events in parks. Not necessarily hosted by the city, but facilitated in that they provide the facilities and opportunities that others can use to provide events and activities. So with that, we broke this down into key recommendations, and I'm only going to touch on these lightly, recognizing that I was here a month ago and we talked and discussed these and refined them just slightly. But understanding that as part of the maintenance efficiencies and effectiveness, we introduced new maintenance tiers that indicated things such as Keizer Rapids Park is going to need a much higher level of maintenance that we called an enhanced level, but most of your neighborhood parks would only need a standard level of maintenance. So it helped us really understand what the true cost would be to maintain those, recognizing that some sites will take more energy than others. But it also recognized that there is this continued partnership with nearby neighbors, with other groups, that will be important to carry forward in terms of clearing out some areas and maintaining some sites. That also applies in terms of reinvesting in the park system. Partnerships have been important there, but we also recognized as part of that the need to improve ADA accessibility across the system while improving other park features, and recognizing that when you are placing certain amenities and facilities, given changing recreation trends, you don't necessarily have to put the same thing back in that you are taking out when it's old and beyond its normal life cycle. There's an opportunity to do things that are slightly different, such as change a traditional play structure to nature play elements, for example. There's also a lot of recommendations around ways to support sports, health, and play opportunities across the community, looking at different opportunities there, such as integrating futsal, which is kind of similar to an outdoor soccer sports court, or introducing a bike skills course or an adventure course like at Keizer Rapids Park. With regards to connections to natural areas and the river, there is a note there to invest in sites that support river access, as noted earlier though, with the exception of Palmisia. And I want to speak to that just a bit here because of questions raised around that recommendation. You know, I think early on we were looking at Palmisia for its opportunities to connect to the river, recognizing that residents wanted that. But in particular, a focus group meeting with the West Keizer Neighborhood Association really pointed out the desire of those neighbors to keep their parks more natural than developed, to the extent that even Keizer Rapids Park, which we know is going to be one of your most highly developed regional parks, they actually advocated for not bringing in a lot of development there, making sure it stayed more natural. And not just the natural section, but to the extent of not adding sports fields at the site, for example. And so we realized that well, we were looking at Keizer Rapids, we want to make sure we're buffering uses from those neighbors to avoid any conflicts there. But that also brought our attention to Palmisia, where if it were developed as a park, would be a special use site that would attract people from across the city, because people do want more access to the river. And we looked at that, plus the fact that it'd be incredibly challenging to get equipment in there, to provide ADA accessibility, to ensure safety, and to minimize impacts on the local neighborhood, and said, let's hold off, let's hang on to this site, not invest in it at this time, see what happens when we invest in improving river access elsewhere in the community, and then regroup on this site to see what can be done. And as part of that, there is a recommendation in there to consider a partnership with nearby neighbors who may want to develop that as a more private or open green space with views of the river, but doing something that's not going to attract people from across the city. There are also recommendations, of course, to improve trails and off-street pathways. I'll show a map here momentarily that will show you where the 3 new trail corridors are that we're recommending. But there's also recommendations to add loop trails in parks, and of course to coordinate with the regional trail system and through transportation to improve non-motorized transportation and active trail use. And then finally, there is a recommendation that while the city is not intending to be in the recreation business themselves, it's important to provide those social spaces where organized activities can take place, large group gatherings, the social gatherings that actually take place at dog parks, for example, as pet owners congregate there, or even adding picnic shelters and pavilions that are reservable for more family and community activities. So here's the trails map that I mentioned earlier that highlights in blue those 3 key new connections. One of them is along the Lavish Ditch, which will connect the existing trail corridor that's there through Hidden Creek Park and into Country Glen Park, onto Volcano Stadium and Keizer Station, which provides an important connection and also connects to the regional trail that runs across there. The other one that's important is connecting McNary High School to the corridor that runs out to Keizer Rapids Park. We felt that a new trail wasn't needed all the way to the park because of the recent improvements in the wide sidewalk that's there. But still, connecting the high school students to that corridor was important. And then that also provides an opportunity to connect to that end of what would be the long-term vision for the Claggett Creek Trail, which potentially long range would be invested in to traverse some wetlands through there, improve access to some underserved areas, and if possible, in long range, connect to the Croc Center in Salem. A lot of the energy in this plan and the investment going forward that we heard from the community is a key priority for this city, is looking at Keizer Rapids Park and just the opportunities that exist there to not only connect to nature, so keeping half the site still natural, reflecting that the fact that it's in a flood zone and is not suitable for high development, but then looking at the other portion of the park and looking at the opportunities to provide much needed sports fields for the community, in particular soccer fields, rugby fields, the rectangular fields that don't exist right now. But also looking at, improvements to the trails and pathways, looking at adding new elements such as the adventure course and bike skills course here at this site, creating an open play field for the community to use, not only for play, but for community events. And to see how these are mapped out, there is a new park concept drawing that replaces the old master plan concept that was there and changes it slightly, recognizing that there's no indoor rec center that's going to be built here in the next 10 years. Instead, we wanted to make sure there was sufficient room for sports fields and an opportunity for partners to help invest in those. Expanded parking to meet the needs of not only those sports fields, the adventure course, but some expanded sports courts that are intended to be built there, such as a pickleball complex that would be suitable for tournaments, or potentially a basketball court or futsal court here at this site. And then making sure that we're looking at those connections to the river. So on the south side, improving views and connections, not only a trail access, but some shelters there and viewpoints and interpretive signage. And the biggest change is opening up areas to provide improved fishing access points then along the river, a critical connection there. And even improving the paved trail system to get to the boating campsite that will also support maintenance vehicles being able to get through there, again, to be able to improve those connections to the river and those natural areas. As you know, this document has a lot of details in the appendices, such as Appendix C, that has more details on every site in the system. So it's not just Keizer Rapids Park that has attention here, but new documentation that even tells the history of sites where that information was available. And then the plan includes some long-term recommendations. These were not costed, but we didn't want to lose sight of the fact that in the long term, there is that vision to develop the trail along Claggett Creek and to potentially expand programs or activities in parks, still keeping that long-range vision to integrate more recreation opportunities later. And then looking at the fact that there were some sites identified for potential parkland in the future. Not one of the 10-year priorities, but something to continue to look at as the city continues to develop. So what does something like this cost? It's important to realize that costs in a plan are put together as planning level costs. It's also important to realize that costs right now are higher than they ever have been because of supply chain issues. So these numbers are higher than the cost estimates that were provided in 2008, not just to account for inflation, but beyond that to recognize that there's a little bit unknown in terms of some of the costs and what they'll be in the next few years. So hopefully this is a higher estimate than would be needed. And we also want to recognize that if partners are contributing to projects, that's not reflected in these costs. That would also be a way to definitely reduce costs. But we wanted to break this down so that you were able to see how much was being spent on new amenities and facilities being added to parks such as Keizer Rapids, because that's really driving the bulk of the costs for this plan. But then how many was also being spent just on the replacement and enhancement of existing parks and facilities to take care of what you have. And those create that total system-wide cost. Matt, do you have a question that you'd like me to address now?
No, we haven't talked about the operations resources yet, right?
Correct.
Okay, sorry, I'll hold it.
The important thing to understand is that capital costs are one-time costs. Operations, though, are annual cost. So the numbers you see there are what's currently being spent on operations, recognizing that we know that maintenance is understaffed and it needs to be enhanced. And there's some of the budget here that has not been taken into account. We know that there are places in the document where we want to make sure that we are adding in facility reservation fees, for example, and rentals that have not been accounted for. But what this really suggests, though, is that especially as parks are invested in and more amenities are added, that we're going to need more maintenance funding to be able to support that on an annual basis. And so with that, just to quickly give you a sense of where these costs come from, they're based on unit costs. So we have an understanding of how much it costs to add or enhance a play area, for example, how much it costs to provide a new sports field, whether it's a grass sports field or whether it's an artificial turf sports field. And so each of these elements are costed out in a way that city staff can go in and see what it would take to add individual elements, recognizing that in some cases they'll be improving sites with several elements happening at the same time. In other cases, especially with partner involvement, maybe moving forward pieces of different sites sooner rather than later. So all of those costs are rolled up in a capital project list that appears in Appendix D, so that in addition to the more detailed recommendations, there is a list of all of the elements to add. There's just 2 parks featured here just to see how it works and how you can see that there's costs broken out for ensuring ADA accessibility, for example, and new development. It also breaks out the capital and operations cost for each site so that city staff have that information to make decisions as part of the annual budgeting and work plan process. The plan also includes prioritization criteria. And this is something that specifically came out of our last meeting, where it was indicated that city staff have a strong work plan and you all have worked well together to establish the priorities to move forward. Creating a 3 to 5 year plan that has worked very effectively for the last several years. So there's a 2-step prioritization process that makes sure that any project that goes forward is aligned, first of all, with those guiding principles for the next 10 years, but then for the park system realities that talk about things such as if there's an additional city initiative or a partner bringing in additional funding, that definitely helps move forward some projects more quickly than others. So it allows you to use that information to be able to make good decisions about how to prioritize projects. So our action plan is really based on some easy steps immediately. And one is completing that 3 to 5 year priority list of projects that has so successfully guided improvements here recently. But then transitioning those funds to support some of the maintenance and operations needs, recognizing that staff are deficient in support at this point. And then as part of that, looking to coordinate with those partners to see which of those partner projects potentially can move forward first with shared investment and shared initiatives. And then, of course, keeping the focus on accessibility in all cases, anytime that you are renovating things, ensuring everything is up to code and according to state and local law. And then, obviously, one of the sites that we've identified that has some of the greatest needs for improvements is Keizer Little League Fields. So it's continuing that program to identify a partner to operate that site and establishing an agreement to understand the responsibilities in taking care of and maintaining that site and making the improvements that are needed. So we talked about the potential partnerships last time. This is just to highlight the fact that there are several, including the one noted at the bottom, which is coordinating with neighborhood associations to be able to get them involved in some of the improvements they would like to see in their local parks. And then finally, the plan ends with some specific funding strategies, just a high-level summary here in terms of advancing those partnerships. making sure that there are sustainable funding sources, so not just the one-time emphasis on capital projects without the long-term operations dollars that are needed to take care of things. Making sure fees and charges are based on market cost, pursuing grants, and then long-term for some of these major improvements, considering a bond measure or other type of measure that might be able to move the bigger projects forward. So as you probably realize, there's a couple of things where we put a pause and wanted your feedback before we did things such as create the executive summary for the plan. We're also updating some of the maps in the appendix that showed park boundaries with new GIS data that has more accurate understanding of where some of those boundaries are located. And then we have been given some newer information with regards to the park operations funding, and Matt, that may have been your question, so we will be updating that information. And then, of course, correcting a few typos and inconsistencies that we found. So at this point, we would like to open things up to your questions, comments, directions, any changes you would like to see, recognizing that really the discussion that you all would like to have is around some of those higher level considerations, maybe with Palmisia, for example. But the minor small scale edits, you can certainly send to Matt or myself, and we'll get those taken care of as well before this plan goes to council on the 29th for their work session review, and then again before it goes to adoption. So I've really enjoyed working with you all, and we're happy to take your questions and comments.
Yes, Matt?
So I do want to talk about Palmisia a little bit. You know, it's almost interesting in your scale of like kind of the progress, and you know, I'll say that one of the comments was about shifting dollars over to, you know, to help maintain the work that Robert and his crew have done. And I think I just want to, because it was like they're deficient, right? Was the term that I heard, and I don't agree with that on any level. And that's just a personal thing. It's not. I get in terms of budget and looking at planning, I get that, but I want to just take a minute and think about where we were 3 years ago and where we are now, and the level of and quality of service I think Robert and his team brought, and that's only because of the city council making that decision to do that parks fee. So I get in terms of planning document, yep, I get it, but I just want to make sure that the public and the people that are watching this really understand and appreciate the great work that Robert and his team have done. So specifically on Palmisia, this is one of those parks that I think gets kicked down the road year after year, master plan after master plan. Personally, I'm not very interested in seeing it taken out of the system. I'd like to keep the sign up. It's something that's been around for a long time. I think that there is definitely a middle ground that has to be found in terms of the kind of investment and dollars that go into that. But I also think that a key function of the way that the city of Keizer operates is volunteerism. And so looking to the people that really care about that park and have the ability and time to go out there and put the little bit of effort in there necessary to take care of it. I don't know that it's going to be, you know, everything and anything that people want out of it, but I think that, you know, we've had it. We've been doing a pretty good job off and on taking care of it. And I think that if we're going to continue to have that as a natural area, I think we have an opportunity now to maybe see what that looks like. And so just, I like to see that remain, personally, eliminate that recommendation to remove the signage. And then I think the other two recommendations, frankly, are adjacently okay. I think there's still the hazard maintenance and stuff that's going to go on, but I think that just having those conversations and trying to come up with creative solutions so that we can come up with something good there. I agree, playgrounds, sports courts, probably not going to be the best use of that area, personally, but it's functioned really well as a natural park, and I think maintaining it as a natural park, and then just encouraging that sort of buy-in from the community is a good path. That's just me personally, but I just wanted to say that for the record.
I appreciate that, and by the way, I'd want to echo your clarification. I don't think we are calling attention to a maintenance deficiency. One of the things we recognize through public outreach is there is strong satisfaction with the work that Robert and his crew are doing. It's a staffing and a funding issue, recognizing that with the improvements going forward, that staff can only do so much.
Correct.
Yes.
I have a question for you. On page 171, 148.0 says that Keizer Rapids Park, and this may just be a typo, under the pickleball complex, it says 3 pairs of courts. Is that 6 courts or is that 3 courts? Pairs would indicate that that would be 6.
I think the intent there is that we need to look at that space in more detail, recognizing we also want to expand the parking lot. I think we're hoping 6 courts will fit there. I think the intent was it maybe 4 to 6, but typically for tournaments, 6 is more ideal.
Okay. And then again, on the same page, Bob Newton Park, replace sports courts. Is that, what does replace refer to? Is that more of a, let's just see what's needed? I guess this is more for Robert. Because, I'm sorry, that's page 171.
No, because if you're looking at just a paper packet, it's got C58 or.
It's Table D1,
Table
under the
D1.
capital projects list.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it on my phone, sorry.
To answer your question, replace is more like update, like not necessarily go changing it a whole lot.
We're not tearing out, we're fixing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It-
That's
Now,
what I
when you
Like
resurface, you
resurfacing
have the
almost.
option, whether you're resurfacing it with, like, what lines are you gonna put back, update, you know.
That's completely down the road.
But-
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
David?
Yes.
Going back to Palmisia, I think pending finding out if there's any restrictions from the Corps of Engineers. If it's something that you couldn't do, is there a possibility of creating an RFP, looking for somebody to do it? And including something like that into the master plan?
Are you referring to like who would actually go do the upgrades?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, let's focus more today on whether or not you want the upgrades done at some point and not who or how we'll do them. So, I'm not trying to get off key here, but
No, and I'm not looking for somebody specific, but the process, I mean, that's not something that you and your crew would necessarily go and do, right?
it depends on what the recommendation is. We could do a lot of it. We can use contractors to help us on certain pieces of it. I don't think what West Kaiser is asking for is anything too crazy.
Right.
So I'm not worried about who's doing it. It's more, does the board agree to have bird viewing stations and benches and better access to the river and everything that they've asked for? Do you want all of that at that park, or do you only want parts of that? Again, it's a master plan.
Right.
Just because it's listed on the master plan doesn't mean we're gonna go down there and develop all those tomorrow.
Correct.
But it allows us the ability to develop that in the future.
Right.
I think it's very important as you're looking at any of these parks to know that. If it's not on the master plan, then it's really hard for us to go do any of that.
Right. So some of the recommendations that I saw was that to not invest in Palmisia. And so by seeing that, I mean, having this be a 10-year plan, you're saying that for the next 10 years, there's not going to be any investment in Palmisia. And so coming from a community that's been asking for things for the last 10 or 15 years, asking them to wait another 10 years possibly for that, that's kind of where I was going with
So Matt, I think if I'm gonna try and interpret, then you're maybe saying all the things that Robert just said we want to include in this, right? So the bird viewing, all, et cetera, and so on, right?
Right.
So eliminate these recommendations and put in the recommendations.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so. Impending the restrictions, or if there is any.
Yeah, well,
But that's, yeah.
I mean, again, I'm not an expert. I can't speak for that as truth, but I don't think a lot of what they're asking for would actually hinder the dike. We're not gonna go do some extreme excavation, you know, we'll work through that, we'll figure out what those guidelines are, and if that's what the board would like to do, we can work through those challenges.
I think one of the ways we can also address this, recognizing that there's a few questions with regards to access for the equipment, for example, or is brought up at the beginning of this meeting. It's really interesting, the response to the question with regards to how nearby neighbors feel about something that might attract more people there. And there was a lot of reference to the outreach that was done in 2008. And we had a smaller focus group this time, so I don't think we have clear direction. I think one of the important recommendations that we could add is start a conversation with neighbors to get the pulse of the neighborhood about their feelings if there's something there that's going to attract people from outside the neighborhood. And then explore opportunities to add amenities and facilities that are consistent with what the neighbor would like to see. I think there's an important question there about, again, if we're going to increase a lot of vehicle traffic there, whether that's really desired or whether really the hope and the intent is just to open up views for nearby neighbors.
You do realize that park is bigger than what it looks like because the neighbors were using it as a garden. So there's an apple orchard and several other things that really look like it squishes down that park. So how detailed of solutions do you want, like Northridge Park? So we just need to require the easements, then we need to purchase the property, and then we need an easement going out to, and a bridge going out to Chamau Road so we can connect that with with Claggett Creek Park.
One of the important additions that we are making to the next iteration is to identify all of the access points to Northridge Park. That's an important piece that even if they're not ADA accessible or it's difficult to get down, we want people to be aware of where those access points are to make sure that we are...
Yeah, I know where they are. They're only 10 feet wide, and the staircase that would be required would be massive. It's pretty steep right there. I think we'd be better going in and out, north-south, and trying to come down from those above easements. Don't you agree, Robert?
Yes, I do. We are planning on pointing out the challenges with that park in this master plan document, so
Good.
that we have that information in front of us as those conversations continue to be had in the near future. We want it to be a little more clear as to why that park's not been developed thus far and where those challenges are for accessing the park, including the fact that it has a gap in between it, where there's private land that owns
Well,
down to the
actually,
creek.
That isn't that hard to take care of. It'd be two
Understand.
partitions.
All right,
To
so,
cut off the bottom of those two lots. And then the problem would be the bridge across the creek and the easements acquired from the end of the subdivision to Shamoa.
all right, so, Mr. Chair, I think I'd like to go back and put a, sort of bookend the Palmisia conversation, because I think your stuff is great. That's all super technical stuff that none of us but you or Robert probably understand exactly how to make that work. You had me on the right train, and then I ended up somewhere in Albuquerque there, so, I think some combination of trying to put in the recommendations that we heard, the bird viewing area, the clearing out access. I don't know that increasing parking spaces is necessarily the right fit. I think the people that go to that park know about that park. I think that people will discover that park, will find that that park has a very special sort of aura of itself. But I think sort of tying into what you said, which would be, and I'll say this for absolute certainty, anything that we put into that park and any recommendation plans, if West Keizer doesn't like it, they're going to show up, no matter what. So, I have no doubt that they're going to come back and say, we don't like that idea, and we'll hear about it. and then we'll find a way to fix it. But, I don't know how to tie a bow on this. Do you have any ideas, Matt? Matthew, sorry.
You get a park bench and you get a park bench.
All sponsored by Matthew Poteet Farmers Insurance.
Right. I mean, if that's what it takes to get a park bench in there, I mean,
We've
sure.
got one now. Robert took a picnic bench in there back in
Right.
August, right?
No, I mean like a bench to sit on and lean back.
You can do that. We actually have a policy in the parks program to buy a bench and have your name on it, right?
Oh, I don't want my name on it. I was just gonna sponsor it. Just buy it and do it.
It can happen. As Chuck Lee used to say, if there's a will, he wants in it. And if there's a will to get it done, you can pay for it.
If I may, I think because this is such a significant change that you guys are talking about compared to what is on paper right now, if somebody could make a recommendation, you guys could vote on that, that would help for this one particular item because it's so big. You're not just talking like one small thing. You're kind of having two conversations here, right? Saying, do we stick with what is said on paper, or do we kind of go back to the old drawing board and say, we want the ability to add X, Y, and Z?
I think that we should, and I would love for Matthew or Matt to lead us on that recommendation, because you guys are both the ones that are guiding the conversation right now.
The master plan is kind of general.
Yes. Well, I think it's important, because if we don't have it in the master plan and we want to
Yeah.
do something later
So,
on, it's going to take.
Debbie, I'm normally much better at taking notes. Did you capture the specific elements that Rhonda and Carolyn talked about?
Well, I don't know. I don't have my computer. It's
Oh, jeez.
probably on the computer. It's probably on this thing right here. So, but, I don't have any way of looking back, but I think I did. And anyway, I can capture it because the rest of this meeting, I'm going to be listening to the tape
Right.
and doing the minutes from that. So, I can, but I don't have, well, maybe you could make your motion to include what was said in the public testimony. Did you get it?
And
Robert?
Rhonda had a letter with her.
Yes.
Yeah, but she's over there writing more stuff
Could we,
on there.
well,
put
she
a
could
Ferris
probably
wheel and-
email it or something. I'm pretty sure she might want to share that. Could we get that?
Yeah.
Robert's got stuff.
Here's what I have for notes based on what was presented, was basically reevaluate what this master plan says right here entirely. Include work parties with West Kaiser Neighborhood Association.
Work parties, you said?
Yes. Ongoing maintenance should be done by city staff. That's a recommendation they made. Obviously, there's a parks fee now that should help with that. Include birding, clear areas for river view, and improve access to the river if possible. Not necessarily a complete vegetation clearing of the hillside, but improvements if they can be done, is what I collected. Is that pretty accurate? Is there anything, points I missed? Extreme points?
No, I listed a few more things that you might consider: dog waste station, interpretive signage, and trash receptacle. That's all.
Yep.
Just the viewing and the benches and the access to the river.
Those three things you mentioned don't necessarily need to be on a master plan. Those are things you can work directly with staff on.
Okay.
Yep.
So basically, the viewing area, some seating if possible, I don't know if the platform can be put over that, but
That's something we'd have to check into, but
yeah.
a recommendation for a viewing platform, if applicable.
Right, viewing area and better access to the river.
Mhm.
Some kind of steps or railing.
Just go off the edge and fall
So
down.
viewing would be clearing out some of the trees.
Okay, yep. Okay, so for process purposes, can we note that and then make the final recommendation as amended? Or do you want individual motions on all the?
Oh, you
No.
could move for all of this.
Okay. Well, what I'm saying is, like, if we have these notes, right, of all the things, and we put the motion on the table to recommend the master plan to council as amended, which would include these things, or do you want a specific motion on these items for Palmisia?
You might want to make a motion to amend the master plan to to, and add the Palmisia things. And then, after
Okay.
you've made that motion, then you make another motion to approve the master plan and recommend it to council as amended. Approve master plan as amended, but I think you should have a motion that clarifies exactly how you're amending the master plan.
And it's the draft master plan.
The draft master plan. You should
draft.
To include birding platforms, river view, and river access. Right?
Okay, I've got notes on that. I think we've got way more parks, so I don't know if,
Yeah, we need to keep
do we
going.
want to wrap this up?
Go ahead and do this one
Get
now.
that one done.
All right, so, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to remove the existing recommended language in the draft master plan for Palmisia Park, as it was. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to remove the existing recommendation language for Palmisia Park in the draft master plan and include the following, include bench areas, coordinate work parties with West Kaiser Neighborhood Association, have birding viewing areas cleared out, improve access to the river, and vegetation improvements at Palmisia. Is that right? Pretty close?
In ongoing city maintenance.
Well, that's, yeah, an ongoing thing. Yep.
All right. We have a motion to amend the language in the master plan. Do we have a second? We have a second. Do we have any discussion?
No, I think the only thing that I'll note is, I've done work in this park, Mr. Potteet's done work in this park, David, you've been down there. I think this is gonna be one of those ones that's gonna be a labor of love. I think that, in this partnership, we'll continue to build on the relationship that we have with Robert. And I think that something good can come out of this. But I also, we've been down this road before, and there's been sort of an initial, hey, we gotta get it going, and then we get a little bit of momentum down on the park, and then it's all good, and then people stop taking care of it, and we're right back to where we are. So if this is gonna be something that's gonna be ongoing, it needs to be ongoing, there has to be that level of commitment. But if we get, 4 or 5 years down the road, and we're right back to where we are, having these same conversations, we didn't do it right. So I think we just need to be thoughtful about that.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. So we're going to take a vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Any other comments on any other parks?
Do you want to do Northridge now?
I already talked to her about it.
You did. Chair?
Oh, Dustin.
I have a general question on the funding aspect, and I don't know if it's been covered, but between the capital funding of potentially up to 29 million and the potential increase in operations of only $112,000 per year, I'm just curious, is that based off of if all $29 million of anticipated capital costs are realized, that's the only amount of the increase annually to maintain everything that's been improved? Or is there somewhere different in that calculation?
Yes, that is correct. However, we did pull out some of the long-term vision projects, such as the Claggett Creek corridor and potential bridges and those types of things. So yes, the maintenance dollars reflect the fact that there will be added maintenance at an enhanced level at specific sites, but a decreased level around some natural areas and a standard level at everything else.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
So this might actually go towards Elizabeth, which has to do with Kaiser Little League and the new contracts with the Little League and also the amphitheater as well with the new RFP. Is that affect this at all? Because I know that those things have happened while all of this is going on. And is that all reflected in this?
So the plan recognizes that decisions have not been made, so it reflects the fact that there's still a search and decisions pending in a detailed agreement with various operators, including for the amphitheater and for Kaiser Little League Fields.
Okay. So it's open for interpretation, basically? Okay.
Anybody else?
All right, well, nobody's going to say anything. Mr. Chair, I'd like to put a motion on the table to recommend the draft master plan to City Council as amended.
Second.
So we have a motion to approve as the master plan, draft master plan as amended. Any discussion? Yes.
I've said this a lot throughout the whole process, and I think that it's really important. This is the first time in the history of Kaiser since 1982 that we have a master plan. I think that is something more than just a perfunctory process, right? The council was wise and put something into effect that is allowing Robert to see this as a visioning document and as an opportunity to actually go in and do really, really great work. Keeping in mind that, with increased work and increased opportunities comes more maintenance dollars. And I think we heard from the Public Works Director last meeting that they've got plans to kind of work on that issue. But this is really exciting. I mean, we're looking at the trail system. If you recall, she showed the trail going through Claggett Creek. That's been there since 1985. Right? A lot of this stuff is not new. And so it's great to see this and be part of this and be, frankly, part of the board that is going to get to kind of advance something really, really cool. And, David and I have been around for quite a long time. We went through all the pain of the master or the parks fee discussions, and Wayne came on partway through that, and it's just really cool. And so, our names are on this document, and I think we have to take a lot of pride in putting this forward to the council, and it's a good day, so.
Yes.
Yeah, one additional question on, with partnerships, and I'm just curious, I don't know if this needs to be, if it would have to be part of the master plan, or I just want to at least address it, with the potential for some pretty expensive, or high dollar capital partnerships that may come into play. Is it necessary to have in the master plan basic parameters of what is necessary for submitting for those partnerships, or is that something that would be handled completely outside of the actual master plan document? I'm just curious if that needs to be a discussion of what would be submitted, especially, we may have $1 million proposals made for partnerships, and does that need to be documented here?
No.
Or is that a separate conversation?
No, because like when we built the big toy, we got all kinds of donations to build the big toy. All that was in the master plan is where the big toy is going to go. It wasn't the design of the big toy, just where it was going to go.
And I think that the RFPs that have already gone out, they have a set amount of where they're, so I think that that's easy to figure in of what's allotted for these contracts. Mm-hmm. Right? Is that what you're kind of asking?
Well, I was thinking specifically, the most recent one we had that isn't part of RFP currently was the potential proposal for like a soccer artificial turf field. And so, we don't know what the detailed cost would be or who exactly is going to partner with that. But just wondering what the expectation is to, vet the groups that are coming in or determine their long-term viability in terms of whether it's going to become.
The only thing we're going to do in this master plan is say where it's going to go.
Okay.
And from my knowledge, as long as it's in the master plan, that the fields or those opportunities are in the plan, all of the other stuff can be negotiated outside of the master plan. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, and, I might look to Cindy for a little reference here, standard practices, but generally, when you're talking things of that nature, that's more of a council decision, legal is involved.
I just wanted to clarify.
More structured,
So,
yeah.
just verifying.
But generally, when there's partnerships, you're not listing things like that in a master plan, are you?
Correct. We
specifically?
wouldn't put the details in there. In some cases, we do include a recommendation that specifies what the partnership agreement should consider. So making sure that you understand not only is this just a one-time capital contribution, what's expectations for long-term maintenance, management, or asset replacement, sort of the conceptual elements that you want to take into account in an agreement with a partner.
And with the operations of the parks, or of Keizer Parks, is the RFP included in that? Is that part of the operations budget, the annual budget, that amount, or is that in addition to?
Not quite sure I'm following your question.
So like the Keizer Amphitheater's been operating X amount of years with current contracts, right? Is that included in your budget?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay, so the future contracts will also be included in that 660,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Which that number was not 100% accurate. So there was one piece missing in that, just so the board knows, and that was the general fund piece.
Right. You're at like 1 point.
We're 2.5% of the general fund, which is, off the top of my head, $360,000 or something. So
Right.
that needed to be added. And then we have a rental income piece but all that's been given to MIG, and it will be, that's one of the like minor detail corrections that needs to be put into this. We're hoping to have it up there before today's conversation, but not trying to muddy the water with a bunch of dollar amounts, more what you want to see in which park. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we have a motion and a second, Mr. Chair. Let's call for the question.
I didn't hear you.
We have a motion and a second,
I
Mr.
know.
Chair. Let's call for
I
the
was just going
question.
to see if anybody had anything else to say. If not, we'll take a vote. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Great job, Cindy. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Done a lot of work.
And I guess Robert gets like 13% of the credit.
If that.
That's an Iron Man reference, but.
Well then.
So, staff report.
Staff report.
This happened.
Yeah, been working
Nobody
on some
got shot.
master plan stuff. Something positive to report on, the fishing pole climber at Clegg, it's been repaired, replaced, back up and running. Reported a while back that that broke. Actually, it was broke at the Parks Tour. The day of the
Yeah.
Parks Tour,
Yeah.
it broke. So that's great. Palmisia, there's a bridge slat that is broken. We just received the replacement pieces for that, so we're gonna get that back up and running here very soon. And we are out getting lawnmowers stuck on a regular basis right now because it won't stop raining and we're trying to deal with leaves. So that's keeping us very busy. Besides that, things are doing good. People are still out using the parks on the sunny days and in between rain showers, so that's good to see. Just kind of doing our fall leaf cleanup is the majority of the game right now for us, so it's keeping us very busy. Thank you.
Councilor Smith.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. So nothing's been going on in council at all?
Nothing.
I'm sorry, I just had to say that. I was like, does it ever end? Yeah, so obviously we've had a few things going on. Just to kind of give everyone a update, we do have the city manager recruitment is now out. Hopefully you've seen that on social media, you're sharing that on social media. Obviously we've hired a recruitment company to do the work. Their job is to go out and find people that want to be the city manager here. It's a little different than just like throwing something out on, one of the main LinkedIn sites or something to that effect. This is actually a recruitment, which means you find people and convince them to come on board. So that is actively underway. Obviously, last week we had a couple of events. One, we did get through the Community Diversity Engagement Committee, and that will be coming up soon. This is going to be a slightly different recruitment process versus what
the past has been for most people on this, on this board, where we are actually going to request a pool of individuals, and that instead of going to the VCC, which is your volunteer coordinating committee, they're actually to come to council so that we can try to make sure that we're aligning those individual appointments with what the overall goal was that, and for extreme transparency purposes. We want to know exactly what we're doing. I'm actually really excited about this group. It's, as I was listening to the conversations about the parks, about the needs, and about the different situations and people and access, and getting the community involved in that conversation about how much traffic do you want in there? High school groups, can we get high school kids to come help? That's kind of the purpose of this group, is to reach all of those individuals, to bring everybody to the table and bring the beauty of our community together, and find maybe people that have never really been involved in this stuff and explain to them. Prior to me being on the city council, I had zero interest in city business. I've never been on a board, so this is all new to me. But it's an opportunity, and I think it's going to be a beautiful thing. I know there's going to be challenges in it, and I hope that we can all work together in a positive manner to realize the beauty that we're actually going to be reaching with this. Obviously, we do have a council vacancy. People have asked me about how that works. When someone vacates, we have to accept it at the next council meeting. When they resign, and then we would declare the vacancy, and then the city council will actually appoint the person who will finish out the term. So since Councilor Day started this year, it is a 4-year term. So whomever we appoint will be finishing out the next 3 years. Wow. So that, just as you know, that's kind of the process. Those with questions can go to the council rules and procedures, which is available on the website, and it's on page 22. That we will be discussing it at the November 15th meeting. And there might be some issues with the timelines, because it's usually required to be filled within 45 days, I believe. Thank you, Debbie. And I don't think that lines up accordingly with a council meeting. So we've got a very short period of time to fill that. Yep. And then get somebody, again, city manager and a few other roles eventually. Why not? It's just a lot of fun here. A couple other things. We had a work session last night regarding PEG funds. One of the things I was going to mention is you were concerned earlier about whether or not the information was being recorded. This is actually, as you can tell by the TV, this is publicized on K23. It pushes out to the K23 channel, and it puts it on their Facebook page. A couple things that came up about that is that the PEG funds, which is basically a fee that Comcast has been contributing to us for a while, those funds cannot be used to pay for the labor that it takes to push that out on K23 anymore. So the meeting we had last night was to figure out those funds can only be used for improvements to, such as like computers and things like that, not for labor. And so the conversation has to start about, do we want the Parks Board to be pushed out onto TV? Is that important to you? And if it is important to you, we kind of need to know that. And we need to know how we're going to figure out how to pay for it. So that's the beginning of the conversation, but that's something I would highly recommend people pay attention to, because it is something we're going to have to figure out a new way around, just like everything else that comes up. Obviously, the Keizer Little League Fields conversation, the amphitheater, that is a hot topic. Every time you're on the front page of the paper, it's a hot topic. And realistically, if there's anything that I can say about this, is there is no physical way for a counselor to understand or know every detail about everything that goes on in the city. We rely on you guys. For example, I don't know if you all know this, but every one of our committees starts off with the exact same line. And that line says, to act in an advisory capacity to the council. And we really rely on you. So as I'm sitting here listening, I've taken 20 pages of notes. But the reason is because I'm not familiar with the park systems to the extent in which you guys have dedicated your time. So first and foremost, thank you so much for that, because it is time out of your day, and it's a lot of reading and it's a lot of work. And when you're trying to make everybody happy, it is difficult. How do you work out getting the Palmisia, which I think I've heard a lot about Palmisia, and I'd love to see some bird watching in cleared areas. And then you said Army Corps of Engineers, my heart stopped. There's just a lot of complications that go along with those things. So I would just really encourage you, as you're passionate in any of these areas, speak up. Please speak up. Send us an email. It really does matter. We do read them. We try to take each one of those into consideration, just like we would someone who comes in and publicly testifies. But sometimes you guys are the ones that hear people publicly testify, and that testimony may never get to us. So if you can please just, if you don't like something, speak up. Let's make sure we're hearing you. And if there's any message I can get out, that's it right now, because there's just a lot of stuff going on. And to work as a group and a community and as a team, we need to hear all voices, and they matter. So, I just would encourage you, don't be afraid to send an email in. Don't be afraid to say, I'm not really fond of that. I thank all of you for the work that you've done on this. I'm really excited about the master plan. I would echo Mr. Lawyer's message there that, we've done a lot as we roll into our 40th year of being a city next year. And we should be proud of where we're at. And now it's kind of that next section of really dialing in those plans and moving forward from there. So thank you guys so much. Thanks for your patience with us as we try to reset ourselves a little bit, but it'll all work out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other business, Matt?
Oh, well, I do too.
I think you should ask Debbie first.
I just wanted to respond to Councilor Smith and let everybody know that regarding the Community Diversity Engagement Committee, if you'll check the website under the latest news, there is a request for letters of intent that was posted this afternoon, and tomorrow it will be on the city's Facebook page. And regarding the committees, all committees, the audio for them is always posted on our city website under the calendar, the city calendar. That's also where you find all the meeting documents as well. So, but you can always listen to any of the committee meetings, even if you can't see them.
Thank you.
So November 13th, there's tree planting at Keizer Rotary Arboretum in honor of Wilbur Bloom. What?
No, there's not.
You what?
Trees are unavailable, so there will be.
Does Mark know this?
Yes.
Why hasn't he told me?
There's still an event, but it's going to be spreading wood chips around all of the current trees.
Oh, yeah, okay,
The planting
as
of
amended.
replacement trees is canceled last minute because we can't get them because of all the weather. They can't be dug, and they'll be available first week of December. Continue.
Well, Robert said we're spreading bark chips.
What time are we planting?
No, it's actually bark chips.
No, we save that for the playgrounds.
So,
That's the fancy stuff.
something is happening on November 13th at the Arboretum. Show up with a variety of different tools and you get what you get. No,
What time?
whatever it is will be fun.
What time?
9 a.m. to noon. So, minus trees. It's a tree planting without trees. So basically a bark dust spreading. That's great.
Sorry.
I am pouting. I hate bark dust.
Well, you get done early that way.
Don't ever say that.
You just did wood chips last month.
I know. Well, I didn't. I just drove a tractor around. That was so much fun, though. That's all I got, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? Then we stand adjourned. What time is it?
7:33.
7:30 what? 3. Stand adjourned at 7:33.
Awesome.
Santa Claus.
Was that